The highly anticipated release of Vanguards dropped today on Elite Dangerous, and with it come Squadron Carriers, which is probably the most anticipated feature of this new release, noting that there's a number of other features that are also meaningful and change the game in substantial manners, and we'll talk about them in a minute. We just started toying with it, and we just got our hands on our very own Squadron Carrier, so we have some information to share and some additional or initial sort of suggestions, ideas, and thoughts to consider as you think about whether you should get one yourself or whether you want to hold off for the time being. So Squadron Carriers come with an overall capacity of 60,000 tons, which is not insignificant, and actually has been raised from the 50,000 tons that was showcased in some early screenshots. That 60,000 ton capacity is shared among a number of items that reside on the carrier between its own services, stored ships, and the most important thing, which is the Squadron Bank. And we'll get to talk about that in a moment. The price of Squadron Carriers is 25 billion credits, which is certainly not insignificant, but it's also considering the fact that it's a group effort, probably not as prohibitive as some commanders thought it might have come to cost them. When it comes to the maintenance, it looks, at least initially, that the maintenance of Squadron Carrier is pretty reasonable. In fact, I think at least the initial numbers that I saw came in even under the numbers of a fully kitted personal carrier, which runs commanders 34 million a week. The initial numbers I saw were more in the 15 million range. But again, I think there's a little bit more research needed because numbers are still a bit wonky as far as like maintenance of Squadron Carriers is concerned. Now, it's worth noting that after you buy a carrier, you will more likely than not also want to install a number of additional services, which raises the price of the carrier a little bit further. And presumably you will also want to install a number of outfitting and potentially even shipyard, or less common, stock units, which in turn take additional credits and space. So the total cost to outfit and kit a carrier, probably for a decent combat fitted carrier, is going to be more in the 30 billion than in the 25 billion range. But once again, it's probably somewhat of a rounding error in the scheme of the sort of richest of player squadrons. Now, if you're looking at a smaller squadron, that's a different story. Then it starts becoming a pretty significant amount of change. Anyhow, those are the overall numbers. Now, Squadron Carriers come with the Squadron Bank, which allows commanders to share credits both directly, finally, so we don't have to resort to weird methods to transfer money to each other. We can do so directly among squadron mates. That's a very notable and welcome addition. And it's also possible to pool money in a number of different tiers. So for instance, we have an officer tier and we have a general or all tier of funds in our squadron, where funds can be sort of like pooled and moved and follow specific access control rules. Now, the notable thing about Squadron Carriers, however, is that it does not contain Vista Genomics, Pioneer Supplies, and it doesn't really have a bar like a personal carrier has a bar. It has a different stock of personal items as part of a Squadron Bank, but it is not something that you can visit on foot. The cool thing about Squadron Carriers, besides their model, I would say, is that they expanded also on the interiors somewhat. So there's an actual aisle you can visit which holds the bank, which is guarded by a couple of NPCs down there, which is nice to see. They've expanded on the briefing area above the bridge. There's now a proper, fully sort of set up briefing area to hold mission briefings, which is pretty cool. And then there's something like called jump capsule or jump room or jump something, which is another separate room accessible via the elevator, which is sort of a little bit, you can think about it like as an overflow room for carrier hyperspace jumps. In case the bridge gets full entirely, that room has been added so that there's additional overflow space for commanders who are on board when the jump happens and can still experience the jump, although it doesn't have windows like the bridge has. So I actually haven't tried to jump while sitting in that room. I've just tried a jump with the carrier sitting in the main room, and it was cool. Like, not only is the carrier notably larger, But the honk, or at least my experience of the honk is that the honk is notably louder. So so far I want to say the experience with the Squadron Carrier has been very positive, at least of our group. That being said, not everybody has had a positive experience with them. Commander Xarian of the Anti-Xeno Initiative still has not successfully been able to buy one, as he is getting Black Adder or Mob Adder or some kind of colored snake or another issue when he tries to go ahead and buy one. He's been trying a number of places. Why that happens is going to be the subject of investigation over the next few days. But again, some commanders are reporting issues in trying to buy a Squadron Carrier. Again, keep in mind, when you go and buy a Squadron Carrier, you need to buy it from a fleet carrier vendor system, and you need to make sure that the 25 billion purchase price of a carrier is in your squadron bank, not in your personal wallet. The purchase of a Squadron Carrier happens from funds available in the squadron wallet, not your personal one. So you need to put funds there before you buy such a carrier. And some other commanders have reported that some funds that they placed in the bank have disappeared. Again, very early days, very sort of anecdotal reports at this point. This is not to create alarmism or like carriers eat up your money, you can't use them, be careful because your money disappears. But it's more to say, hey, there are reports that people are saying that funds stored into carriers have somewhat mysteriously disappeared. So it can happen. Again, just something to keep in mind. The sharing of ships in carriers is limited to non-restricted, non-engineered, non-paid with ARCs ships, which makes it effectively useless or almost useless. But I guess it's a feature that doesn't hurt to have there. So good to have it, I guess, even though nobody will probably use it at all. The ability to share funds is nice. The ability to share bar materials is somewhat nice, although probably not all that essential. So in practice and in reality, sharing is rather limited. What is nice, though, is that you can use, again, permission groups to set different permissions for commanders and what they can do with a Squadron Carrier. So you can have multiple people that has permissions to jump a Squadron Carrier to different parts of the galaxy, which is actually very convenient as a squadron, I will say. Or to use a Squadron Carrier for example, colonization purposes, which is really good because it has a very significant cargo hold to carry a ton of metals and other materials. So I think we'll see Squadron Carriers becoming very, very popular, as they effectively are mega carriers that can be shared and do what carriers do, but with an additional layer of capacity to them. So they're great. And the interiors are nice and have additional spaces to sort of get together and hang out as a squadron. Now, one interesting thing worth noting is that the docking at Squadron Carriers is inherently and solely restricted to squadron members. Unlike your personal carrier, where you can select whether you want just yourself or just you and your friends, or just you, your friends, and your squadron, or everyone to have docking privileges, there is no such setting on Squadron Carriers. Squadron Carriers are locked into squadron access only. So in order to dock at the Squadron Carrier, you have to be part of that particular squadron. Otherwise, you're not docking there. Or at least that was our initial impression. If you've had a different experience, by all means, let me know in the comments below. So that's, I think, roughly it when it comes to the sort of summary of the new Squadron Carriers. Oh, one more thing about the Squadron Carriers. Squadron Carriers work with the same liveries and cosmetics as personal carriers. In fact, right now, you can't even buy cosmetics for Squadron Carriers in the Squadron Carrier view. You have to go to your personal carrier, buy whatever cosmetics you want for your personal carrier, then go to the Squadron Carrier and apply the cosmetics you bought for your personal carrier to the Squadron Carrier. That feels very wrong and odd and weird and not exactly at all how I would have done it. So I'm surprised that it works that way, but it works that way right now. So that's what it is. So again, something to keep in mind if you're trying to sort of change the color of your Squadron Carrier and you're wondering why there are no options. The reason is because you actually have to do it in your personal carrier view instead. And again, the same cosmetics apply to Covas and engine color and pad signage color, and in addition to the carrier livery itself. Now, moving on to squadrons and the changes to squadrons. The overhaul, I think I want to say overall, is pretty good. You can add an additional number of ranks to squadrons, which is actually pretty handy, especially for larger squadrons that were limited quite a bit by the, I think it was, 4 ranks that were available in addition to the Finder Bureau, 4 or 5, something like that. Now you can have, I don't know how many, but a lot more. So you have a lot more granularity with regards to how you set permissions. And in addition to the ranks themselves, you can set permission groups that allows you to, in a very fine-grained manner, determine what individual groups of commanders are allowed to do or not do within the context of managing and running a squadron. So that's all good and fine. There's also a bulletin board now, which honestly I think is completely useless because any sizable squadron will already be coordinating either via Discord or on the forums or with some other means of communication that is a lot more effective than the in-game bulletin that they set up. But they set it up, and again, it's not a feature that hurts anybody, so I guess it's good that it's there, even though I don't think it's going to see a lot of use. There's new leaderboards. In fact, the introduction of Vanguards has resulted in a short season for the legacy or old version of the leaderboards, which wrapped and started a new season with a different set of leaderboards, which have been expanded. There's now additional leaderboards for such things as like colonization materials, and for such things as also profits from smuggling goods, from smuggling and from selling illegal goods. All those are new. There's a handful of others. We'll go into greater detail at a later date once I'm actually at my PC and I'm able to show you some of these things rather than just riff off of them for a while. But overall, I think that is also a pretty good change. I am aware that Frontier had touted the concept of having different brackets, as in brackets for large squadrons of up to 500 people and potentially also for smaller squadrons with fewer people. I have not seen how that plays out yet. I haven't studied it in extreme detail. I'm going to go back and look at it in more detail, but it is something that I want to look in a little bit more depth on, like whether those brackets are actually in the game or not. But even without the concepts of the brackets, there's a lot more information about the respective standings and the respective contribution of players and your personal contribution in the context of a squadron score. So a lot more transparency and visibility in terms of squadron scoring. Those are all good things. So that's, I think, all in all, a welcome addition to the way squadrons operate. There's also the fact that you can now have a so-called dynamic custom squadron logo, which is nice. And again, if you can put it on your ship and it appears on your carrier, and if you update it in the squadron view, it automatically updates it on ships and on your carrier. Is it going to be a make or break and fundamentally change the game? No, but it's a nice touch to display your colors as part of your squadron in a way that is unique and adds some additional identity to your squadron membership. So that's a welcome thing. There's also some additional flavor text that you can insert in the description of your squadron, having a motto and the like. But again, those are more cosmetic flavor things that don't fundamentally change the nature of how squadrons operate. The more substantive gameplay-related change that does affect how squadron operate is the introduction of squadron perks. Squadron perks, there's two. Each squadron effectively can have 2 squadron perks. One that is specific to the squadron and applies everywhere, like galactic-wide, and that allows you to select from a longer list of bonuses. Like, for example, in the Anti-Xeno Initiative and Xeno Strike Force, we selected a squadron perk, the reduced premium ammo synth cost, which is very significant. It's 50%. That means that the synthesis of premium ammunition now costs you only half as many materials as it did before. And since we all know in the endgame of Elite, the real wealth is expressed in the form of materials, not in terms of credits, it is a very significant bonus for people who use premium ammunition on a more or less regular basis. There's a number of additional other bonuses which then can also be tied to the faction that your squadron supports. As in, you now have the option of selecting a superpower allegiance, whether you want to be federal, imperial, alliance, or independent, which practically does nothing other than state your general allegiance. You can select a faction you support, either a player-managed faction or NPC faction. And what that does is it activates a secondary perk when you are in systems controlled by that faction. So for example, we selected the Anti-Xeno Initiative. The Anti-Xeno Initiative controls large swaths of the Pleiades in addition to a number of other systems. When we are in those systems, the second perk, the second squadron perk, kicks in and activates. That's how the faction perk works. And that is selectable and changeable at any time also among a smaller list of perks, which tend to be somewhat less impactful, but nice things to have. Like, for example, we selected a 7.5% increase in wing bonds for combat, which, again, it's not probably a game changer, but it's a nice thing to have. We'll take it. 7.5% credits on top of what we make anyway. Normally, it's a good thing to have. So, perks, very good change, very interesting. Some are obviously more interesting than others. There's some that actually were generally never available before, like this one that reduces notoriety. We'll go into more detail at a later time, again, when I can show you and we're in front of a proper PC. But suffice it to say for now that the perk system introduced with Vanguards is very interesting. So that's sort of a squadron aspect of it all. I touched upon the squadron bank briefly. We could go into a little bit more detail with regards to the squadron bank works, but again, because of its limitations with regards to how you can share ships, the only thing that you kind of really need to know about is the fact that it lets people share money relatively easily in ways that beforehand took a bunch of time and now can be done kind of instantaneously. And that is main feature as far as squadron behavior is concerned. That is also subject to permissioning, so be careful about giving that 60 billion credit bank available to all your squadron members, because somebody might decide to run away with cash, and I don't think something you can do at that point. So something to keep in mind that wasn't a thing in the game before, might be a thing now that you should consider. So that covers the squadron side. There's a number of minor fixes as well that come with this patch. The most substantive and possibly meaningful and impactful of it is that Frontier has reportedly fixed the flickering shadows issue that has plagued this game since Odyssey release, and which was probably the most notable, annoying, and candidly just obnoxious visual bug that was in the game and has been in the game for the longest time. So again, it's early days to report if that bug has completely been annihilated or not, but we shall see. Like, again, we'll keep an eye peeled in terms of reports and additional information from different groups. On the flip side, with this Vanguards patch, our British friends are being completely mum in regards to Trailblazers, and whether Trailblazers, which supposedly is still in beta, is getting any update at any point in time in the future or not. As effectively now we have what are essentially 3 betas running concurrently. We have Vanguards, which is effectively a beta of a new fleet carrier. We have Trailblazers, which is technically and officially still in beta. And then we have Powerplay 2.0, which is not officially called in beta, but is plagued by so many issues that it is effectively a beta, even though it is not called as such. So we're in a very unique situation with like effectively 3 betas running in parallel. And it'll be interesting to get a sense of whether there's going to be additional movement on some of the ones that have been running for a longer time or not. And also no update or no information about the famous or infamous, depending on which side of the debate you are on that one, so-called funny hull exploit or bug or feature, as some people may call it. So curious to see whether there's going to be some movement on that in the future as well. That's it for now. Commander Mecha, as you can see, is on the road, so he's had only a chance to try out Vanguards with GeForce Now on his iPad, but nevertheless has had a good time with his squadron mates of the Xenostrike Force and their new Squadron Carrier. Overall, I want to say positively impressed about Vanguards in its day of launch. I was expecting less than what we got, and we got more. And the things that we got overall are good. Are there going to be issues, bugs, and things that don't work? Yes, as always. But the core of what Vanguards does for the game is good. It enhances quality of life of Squadron in a meaningful way. It adds something that is interesting from a narrative and gameplay standpoint, which is Squadron Carriers, even if they don't fundamentally transform anything, it adds a cool number of perks for squadrons that provide benefits to players in game, which is a good thing. So, and you know me, I am not shy about being critical when criticism I feel is deserved. So I'm giving this a thumbs up. Well done, guys at FDev. This one's a good one. Go to Mankind. Commander Mecha, over and out.